Deer man and deer woman. Deer man is a cryptid whose legend originates in the folklore of North America. Sightings of the deer man have been reported from several United States, although there is some variation in the descriptions given. A hybrid animal, the deer man has the antlers of a great stag, a human's torso, and legs described as similar to either those of a man or a deer. In addition, it is usually said to be well-muscled and surprisingly fast for its size. Other accounts gift the beast with the power to transform itself from a regular deer into the form described. Ohio, unknown date. An unnamed 14-year-old witness was playing at his cousin's house near sunset when he spotted a creature emerging from the brush. His report read, "It was getting dark, and I was the one searching. I heard leaves crumpling, and when I turned to look, I saw what looked like a deer on its hind legs. I clearly remember seeing dog legs running, but the rest of the body was straight up. And it ran with incredible speed, and I knew it wasn't either of my cousins hiding. I ran as fast as I could back to the house, and one of my cousins was running in too. He saw the same thing. It still creeps me out to this day because my uncle always told us how he saw weird things on that property." Hockessin, Delaware, 1993. Another account from an at the time 8-year-old witness, again, unnamed, who was staying with his grandparents at their home in the Woodland States. "It was right there, like almost pressed against the window in profile. I stared in awe. And that is when it changed. In one smooth movement, it reared up on its hind legs, and it was no longer a deer but a man. There were only 2 men in the area, my grandfather and my dad, and it was clearly neither, not sure if that made it better or worse. Grandfather was very built for his age, Dad had a gut. This silhouette was clearly younger and more muscular, but not in the like a brick way my grandfather was. It exuded strength. And scared the hell out of me. It started to the side for a moment and then strode off with purpose. Looking back, I want to tell myself it was just the imagination of a half-awake child, but I remember the awe and the utter fear I felt when the deer changed." Wichita Mountains National Wildlife Refuge, Oklahoma, 2012. In this report, a man named Kyle Hain was out with his friend photographing the night sky when a number of wild animals, including both elk and bison, rushed past, giving off the impression that they were attempting to escape from something lurking in the nearby forest. Subsequently, a deathly silence descended across the landscape. Decidedly unsettled by this turn of events, the men packed up their gear and began to retreat to their vehicle when a sudden rustling in the long grass caused them to bring their rifles to bear. Reaching their vehicle, Hain and his companion were about to drive off when a deer man emerged from the shadows and began to lurch towards them. By now terrified, the 2 men hit the accelerator and sped off as fast as they could manage. Commenting on the encounter, Hain said, "We were scared shitless. Things got even quieter when we stayed there. While there, we heard an ear-piercing screech or scream, almost a hunting screech of some sort, that made my hair stand on end and gave me goosebumps even worse. With that, we left the mountains completely. We felt as though we were not wanted there that night." The wildlife's behavior, the figure we encountered that the animals had to flee from, and then the scream of which I can only find references to happens to be the banshee. I cannot forget that figure we saw, as well as the scream. It wasn't human, but it wasn't any of the wildlife I've seen out there. Deer woman. Wendy Froud refers to this legend as the Horned Woman and says that among the southeastern tribes of the United States, Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, and Choctaw, the legend is pretty much the same. She mentions that the Dakota and Lakota tribes have stories about this deer woman that is a bit different but still similar to those of the southeastern tribes. Another tribe, the Cherokee, uses the story of the deer woman more as a spirit associated with fertility and maturation than as a means to prepare young women for marriage. The stories of the Southeast tribes primarily warn against marrying someone who is not approved by one's family and society. The society felt that arranged marriages ensured the survival of their culture and the propagation of their people. The main story revolves around a young man who is seduced by a beautiful young woman, and he leaves his home, family, and tribe for her. If he continues to be with this young woman, he will fall more deeply under her spell and stay with her, which ultimately results in depression, despair, prostitution, and death. The only way to discover the real identity of the enchantress is to look at her feet. If she is the dear woman, her feet will be hers, and knowing that should break the spell for the enamored young man. According to Wendy, her, Dear Woman's, tales are morality narratives. She teaches us that the misuse of sexual power is a transgression that will end in madness and death. The only way to save oneself from the magic of Dear Woman is to look at her feet, see her hooves, and recognize her for what she is. Dear Woman instructs us that sexual attraction does not make a proper marriage. It is the societal and cultural responsibility of each tribal member to choose a mate wisely, therefore ensuring tribal survival into the next generation. Both the Karuk stories and the southeastern stories illustrate this cultural responsibility. Dear Woman can also appear as an old woman or even a deer. She is sometimes described as having the upper body of a young woman and the lower body of a deer. When compared with other similar tribal legends of dangerous women, these females all have physical deformities and lure men to their deaths. It seems there are two basic stories about deer people, one concerning a deer man and the other a deer woman. According to an old Cherokee legend, people and animals could communicate long ago. Things went well as long as the people only harvested the animals they needed for food, clothing, and shelter. As time went on, the people got a bit greedy, or some might say, bloodthirsty. That's when they started killing animals indiscriminately. The animals tried to rebel but couldn't overcome the human hunters. Finally, Awi-Uzdi, little deer and leader of his people, met with the hunters and told them that from that point on, they had to perform a ceremony before their hunts, asking the animals permission to kill one of their own. Then the hunters must ask for forgiveness from the sacrificial animal and respect it. The story continues by saying that if the hunters refused to do these things, Awi-Uzdi would hunt them down and cripple them using his own magic powers so that they would no longer be able to hunt. At first, not all of the hunters agreed to the terms, and they continued to hunt indiscriminately. Awi-Uzdi hunted them down and afflicted them with severe rheumatism, so they were no longer able to hunt. Soon after, all the hunters followed the terms of Awi-Uzdi, and peace descended on the land once more. The Dear Woman story is a bit different. It reminds me of a Grimm's fairy tale with its cautionary overtones and morality tale undertones.